Hello everyone, welcome to part 2 of our Airbus A380 tutorial by Fly-by-Wire. As I've been saying before, this is an alpha, so there's a lot of things that aren't complete, but it is still a pretty cool plane, and we're going to go ahead and get rolling with it today. Let's get started. So now that we've gotten everything set up from our last video, all of our settings are set correctly, all of our buttons have been pushed, our knobs have been tweaked, it is now time to control with the checklist to make sure we didn't miss anything obvious. Let's see here. Before start, looks good to me. We're going to do after start. Anti-ice not required. Picture trim is set to take off, and rudder trim is set to neutral. Fantastic. Taxi. All right. Let's do it. Release the park and brake. We're going to give it just a little bit of power here. This thing is, to say this thing's a lot of airplane is putting it pretty lightly. One of the things you got to be really careful with, I found out, is if you jam on the rudder really hard, you'll notice the front wheel does one of those things, and it doesn't really turn the plane. It just sort of skids. So just kind of be advised whenever you're doing anything like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of rip through our handy-dandy little kind of checklist here. One of the cool things is if you hit Alt, right Alt, and click on it, you can actually pop it out. And the reason this is so darn helpful is you can sit here and just kind of blast through it as you're kind of taxiing around, running into buildings and crashing into people. All right, flight controls are good. We have ourselves the flap setting was set. Radar is already on. I took care of that. We can do just like that if we need to. Looks good to me. Takeoff seatbelts are set. Ground spoilers are set. Flaps are takeoff. Auto brake is rejected takeoff. Takeoff configuration was checked. Mark is complete. Sweet. And we'll come over here and I'll take care of that next item in just a few moments. Now, taxiing this thing is kind of like taxiing an office building around. It's tedious, and it's lumbering, and it likes to make really loud noises all of a sudden, which I get the real one probably does that as well. And of course, because we weigh about 1 million pounds, about 600,000 kilos, it's enough. I'm sorry, we're less than that. We're like 400,000 kilos, my bad. It's enough. It's enough. And obviously getting this thing to go around a corner is a process. This is not a Microsoft flight simulator. I'm just going to kind of whip it around kind of an aircraft. Now, before you get in the air, just remember to take the time to go into your settings and your throttle settings especially, and make sure everything is where it needs to be. One of the mistakes I made when I first started goofing around with one of these is not having one side of the throttle set correctly, and I found that out the hard way when I went to basically accelerate down the runway, and like one engine's going, huh, and the other engine's going, what? And it was not pleasant, so just be mindful of that. Make sure you got all that set the way that you want it. So again, when you go to take a turn in this thing, just remember you're huge. So you want to go a little bit beyond the turn, kind of like I've got here. I usually line it up with the side of the pad, and what you're going to do is just kind of kick it over really gently. Try not to use full deflection of your rudder because you'll find you actually have less control. And if you feel the thing kind of wandering on you a little bit, just slow down. That's the easiest way to kind of correct it. This thing does not have what I call pinpoint turning or anything along those lines. Now, give it a little bit of power. Again, you're not looking for anything excessive here. You're just kind of getting it rolling. Whoa, that was too much power. You forget that we have 4 engines on this thing, and it does get going pretty fast. Now, one of the things I'm going to do, which is extremely naughty here, is I'm actually going to be taking off from, first of all, the wrong runway, and second of all, I'm going to be taking off from halfway down the runway rather than the whole way. Another simple convenience for that here is we're at Edwards Air Force Base. I was basically doing traffic patterns, trying to figure out how to get this thing on the ground, which I would not consider myself an expert at in any means. And one of the things, of course, that came up during all that is like, I just taxi this side, just go kind of a thing. So you'll have to forgive me for this ridiculously silly takeoff that I'm about to do here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my left. This is going to be ridiculously silly. You would think I'm flying like a Cessna 182, what I'm about to do here. But the idea is going to be the same. Obviously, normally what you're going to want to do is line up correctly with the end of the runway and not do the silliness that I'm doing right here. But like I said, it's a demonstration, so I can go ahead and do things that are naughty even though I'm not supposed to. Do as I say, not as I do. And all we're going to do is we're going to kick the entire plane. Pretend you have a trailer. It's going to make more sense when you go to straighten this thing out. Oh my goodness. And we're just going to line ourselves right up right there. Park and brake on. Cool. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to get line up. Takeoff runway, we have set. Cabin crew, give them heads. Packs are on. I think we did that already. Just checking. Pack. Yep, packs are on. So we do have air conditioning because we asked for it. Done to go. We can do departure change. We're not doing that. Approach. Again, we don't even need to touch any of those things for a long time. One of the things you'll see here is this is takeoff configuration test. We can come down here at any point and push that button. You'll see that it turned green to let us know that we've done that correctly. So everything's good to go. It's just a matter of getting some lights on. I appreciate the simplicity of the landing lights. I don't have to do different modes or anything. It's just on or off, and that's good to go. All right, because we're in Airbus, we're basically going to push the power up and make sure all 4 engines agree. They won't in the real world. They will in the sim. And then we're going to tap it up into either flex or toga based on what setting you have. So I'm going to go ahead and hold the brakes. One of the cool parts here is you get to hear the engine noises. I'll stop talking so you can enjoy the fun. All right, going up. So as you can see, takeoff's pretty straightforward. In a few moments, this little light here is going to warn me and say, hey, just so you know, please set it to lever climb. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull our throttle back. The climb detent is going to say thrust climb over here on the left. It's going to say climb on the autopilot master mode. And we're going to start climbing up just like that. And that's one of the handy dandy things that we have, just like that. So this is a neat airplane in the sense that a lot of it is designed to be heavily automated, highly automatic, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. You can see me turn my volume down so I can hear myself think again. One of the things you need to know about it, though, is right now the computer is doing all the work. Since we don't have those little dots to tell us what mode we're on, all you have to do is to look up here in the top to see what autopilot modes are kind of on pre-standby mode. These are kind of like little advisories saying, hey, autopilot 1's on, flight director 2's on both sides, auto thrust is on. You'll notice nav is green, which means it is the currently selected mode. You'll see that climb is basically selected. We're in just a standard climb, not an open climb or anything goofy like that. And you can see that we have pre-selected altitude hold mode, which will engage the moment we cross 36,000 feet. On the left-hand side, you can see our thrust selection is climb, and we can actually come down here, and we can confirm that visually, because you can see we're sitting here kind of chilling on the climb detent right now. It's about 81% power, which makes about sense, kind of a thing like that. And what we need to do now that we're in the air, and again, we have no checklist for this particular item. I don't know why that didn't work, but that's okay. One of the things we need to do now that we're up here is just kind of run through our last couple different options. There's 10,000 feet. We're going to go ahead and get rid of all these lovely lights. We pulled our flaps up already. We're going to disengage our spoilers. Just push it down like that. Double check to make sure your flaps are set. It'll scream at you if they're not. One of the things we can do while we're kind of going up here is that we can come down here and run through our systems. If you push in on the engine page, it's just kind of switch over to kind of cruise mode, which is going to give us a little heads up of what's going on. I don't like the fact that we have units in pounds and in kilograms. That is an accident waiting to happen. Because again, what do we have, kind of a thing. The nice thing about this little cruise page, though, is it just gives you kind of a general idea of what's going on here. You can see our currently selected flight plan waypoint is chilling right there. You can see that everything else critical that we really need is all just sort of right there at this time. Now that we're kind of gotten up here, and like I said, easy stuff, easy stuff. This guy's happily flashing away at me. I don't know why it's being goofy. Probably one of the things I did earlier is I probably changed it, so I could pull that back to standard pressure. It's the way I set one of my settings. My transition altitude was incorrect. What I should have done for a transition altitude was quite a bit higher. That was definitely a newbie mistake on my point. Thrust reduction height, acceleration height, engine out height. Again, I can fiddle with all those things later on. Something I missed, but I'm not worried about it too much because it's not going to impact the performance of this aircraft. So at this point, it's just a matter of enjoying the flight. And I can take a look out the window here. And, well, if you don't mind the noise, it's pretty good. But the big thing here is just relaxing. It's an Airbus A380. It's a very, very easy to fly plane once you kind of get the party started. One of the things I love, like all these things, is you can come in the back and you can enjoy it. Oh, it is so quiet up here. Look at these seats. Oh my goodness, look at this. Oh my gosh, this is living in some real luxury here. I feel really bad for the people who, have slightly older computers that, like, when they turn their heads in here and look at just how much detail there is in this place, that their frame rate just goes, "Aw." But like, what the heck? They have little golden tablets computers, like, for each seat and stuff. Like who does this on an airplane? Of course, the best place is you can come up here. Actually, I'm gonna back up a little bit so you can see the window. There we go. So you can look out the window and you can watch this stupidly huge wing do its little happy dance as we're kind of cruising around. And of course, if I go like this through the floor, you can drop right down to the cheap seats. When I was flying in this Airbus, actually, in the real world, I had the seat all the way here. This is the seat that I had. I don't even think I had a window, like a couple people. That was a really fun adventure for me, too, because I was next to two Italian professors. And it was really amusing. My Italian is non-existent, and I mean non-existent. I know nothing. But it was really fun to have conversations with them and kind of get a feel for the different things. But anyway, we're not here to play passenger. If you want to play passenger, feel free to set yourself a default camera view so you can enjoy the thing in the back. So right now, we're basically about monitoring to make sure everything's working properly, and that's what we're going to check. So things we're looking out for. First of all, we're climbing properly. Our selected speed agrees with our actual speed. Altitude's rising, selected altitude's good, vertical speed looks good. We're very, very light, so that's why we're going up so darn fast here. Well, the fact you can click on this map, what a cool touch. Come on over here, you can see that everything's set. Our engine power is slowly increasing. Obviously, you've got to spin faster to get the same power if you're at a higher altitude where the air gets thinner. One of the things you got to watch out for is you don't accidentally tap your throttle and make it come out of its detent. Remember a minute ago, this is at 81%, and now you can see it's at 85. That was just me fiddling around with the view button. I accidentally hit that kind of a thing. We're up high enough where we can go ahead and pop off terrain. You'll notice we just switched over to Mach mode there. That tells you that you crossed that 26,000 feet. Nothing to worry about as far as that goes. And again, we're not going to be changing any of those settings anytime soon. Other the fact the meter button doesn't work, but we get the Mach and speed button. That's kind of nice. And again, we're going up perfectly fine. Switch autopilots if you need it. So one of the things I like to do during a climb out like this is I like to kind of run through all my systems to make sure they make sense. I'm going to bring out my range here to about 80 on that side. Normally I do a more or less maximum range on that side. It depends, of course, on the particular aircraft and the journey you're taking. We have a very short flight today. Like you can already see my top of, let me go on this page. You can see my top of climb is going to be basically sitting there right before EHF. It's like I did the math or something. And you can even see that my top of descent is not too far after. There's our handy dandy little kind of cruise there. And if we wanted to be really goofy, we could go out to 320. And you could actually see San Francisco 28 right is basically sitting there waiting for us. We're lined up with it nearly perfectly, which is definitely something that we'll handle later. So let's go ahead and get to the top of our climb here. There we are. Top of climb. Man, does this thing climb when it's not heavy. This is delightful how fast this thing gets up here. And well, let's see how my engines are turning perfectly fine. It's probably a little windy if I stuck my head out here like this, so I'm going to get back inside for a second. All right, so now we have kind of what I call our cruise chores. And for me, one of the things I like to do is, you can't see me doing this, but I'm going through all of my controls because I have a couple different peripherals and things like that. And just confirming they're all in the right position because you don't want to hit something with your hand that's like your landing gear or something like that. Just check to make sure you put it all back where it needs to go. Next, what I like to do is I like to cruise through each one of my different settings to just sort of check to make sure everything is ready, kind of like in the position that it needs to be before I get doing it. Cabin pressure, this is all kind of good to go. You can fiddle with these things if you need to. I never really see the need in case of, like, obviously, if you have an emergency of some kind, you can sort of play with that. I'm not too worried about it. We have no angry lights above our heads, which is good for me. Swinging down here, of course, so we have the option to take a look at our different components, like this little CCD button here. Cursor control device. It basically gives you a joystick. But one of the things we can do here is we can go through our different settings. Open up our engine page, for example, and you can see the engines are all identical clones of each other. That's just not true in the real world. I'm okay with it in a flight sim, but that's just not how it is in the real world. Bleed page, of course, if you want to double check to make sure everybody's contributing what they need to contribute as far as our packs. Again, it's pretty comfortable. 25 Celsius is fine. Not too worried about that. Cabin pressure page, you can see here our delta is very high in this aircraft, unusually high, which is awesome. We see we have 6,000 feet. That's glorious. Everything's good as far as that goes. Again, nothing unusual coming down there. We have all this different pages as far as AC. Everything looks good, comfortable. You can see our generator 4 is doing nothing right now, which is fine. It doesn't need to do anything right now. It's just sort of hanging out. APU should be off. It is. Condition, you can see here it's comfortable, 24 degrees. We could turn it up or down if we wanted to, depending. Obviously, it doesn't matter. Doors, they should be closed. ELTC. And you can come down here and take a look at our electrical DC page. Everything's in great shape. Obviously, the APU isn't producing anything right now, so we don't have to stress about that too much. Kind of a fun little idiot check you can do, though, is if you take a look here, like let's say we pick essential batteries at 28 volts, what you can actually do is float up here. Whoa! Maybe you can float up here. I'm having trouble. There we go. There we go. One of the things they have is you can actually check the battery settings. So I can pop this here. And if I switch to the essential battery, you can see it's chilling at 27 volts. And if I switch to battery 1, you can see there's your 28 and there's your 28, kind of a thing like that. So we're going to have to let maintenance know that because they're not agreeing. Our APU battery is okay, but you can see the essential, was not matching what it actually says here. And again, I'm not nitpicking, either that or it's a maintenance problem kind of a thing. So what we can do too, of course, we don't have a video page, which is so disappointing because it's one of the coolest pages on a real Airbus. We have a fuel page if we want to go ahead and monitor all these systems. Taking a look here. Looks pretty good. Again, plenty of fuel on board. We have enough. That's 48,000 pounds. We need like 22 or something like that. I forget what the math came out to be today, so we're fine. Don't have to worry about that too much. Swinging down here, of course, you have your hydraulic page. On Airbuses, we're all colored systems. There's green, yellow, blue. And you can see, obviously, they're running fine. There's no issues with any of those pumps, and everything's smooth. We can go to the wheel page. It should tell our wheels, okay, this is a little weird. Because on the real one, you'd still see a little bit of heat because of the brakes that I used. You would just have 0. So I'm sure that's going to be something they're going to add a little bit later on. But we have plenty of tire pressure, so I'm not worried about that at all. Swinging down to flight controls, you're not going to see much of anything here. It's just going to tell us what we have going on. We have a little tiny bit of pitch trim. You can see we're in the sweet range as far as that goes. All these systems are good. You've got all the hydraulic pressures. All the trims are set. Obviously, it's not a very bumpy flight, so like the thing's not like twisting all over the place or anything along those lines. So I'm not too worried about it. And then, of course, one of the buttons you have here, we can hit that page. It's kind of that kind of cruise page if you need it. And, of course, you have the all button, which doesn't work here. So instead what you'd have to do is you'd have to click it one more time, and that'll switch it to the page that you need at this particular given time. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to zoom in just a bit here. Let's go pop it a couple notches. We're pretty zoomed out here. We're heading up towards scrap, and we're actually getting really, really close to our top of descent. Like I said, it does not take very long to get. This is a very, very short flight, relatively speaking, for an airplane that has intercontinental range, especially. So we're going to fast forward to right here. All right, we're just about to top of descent. Not bad, huh? So you can see we're about 8 miles away, and one of the things we're going to have to do is basically go ahead and get the aircraft ready to descend. So the way we do that is we pick an altitude. Obviously, this would be air traffic control in the real world. But for us, what I like to do is pick kind of like this last altitude, this 1,800 feet, right before we hit the ground there. And I'm just going to come in here and dial that in. So I'm going to come down here and set that all the way down. At about 2,000, I'm going to flip the little switch here and push it over 100, come down to 1,800 feet, just like that. Again, if I need to switch this back to the thousands, I can. So the way this usually works is we're going to cross this threshold right here, and everything is going to basically get ready. One of the things we can do while we're getting ready for that is if we go down to the performance page, you can see we're kind of in the descent. You'll also notice there's an activate approach button down here to make our lives a little bit easier. But the big thing here is you can see it's going to basically go ripping down the first chance that it gets when it crosses that little threshold. If we go back to our flight plan real fast, what you'll see here is we're looking basically at this point here, and it's pretty darn soon. We'll go ahead and zoom in a little bit here. I want to kind of catch just that part, which is sort of the fun bit. And you can see that's about 4 miles away. Now, one of the things you have to be mindful of is when you cross that threshold, if for some reason it doesn't decide to start descending, we could basically give it a little push to make sure that it's going to start descending on its own. Remember, again, this is an alpha, and I don't professionally fly Airbus A380s, so there could be little things here, but I do know it works for this particular aircraft. See, about 2.5 miles to go, which isn't too bad. Good time to go double check to make sure we have enough gas to get there. It could be complicated. Yeah, 42,000 pounds is plenty. And again, now we're going to be hitting the ground pretty hard when we get there. Need to play the kind of like a little musical sting here as soon as you get close to that particular point. One thing we can do while we're at it, though, is we can actually turn on our velocity vector and our glide slope if you don't mind having a little bit of trouble here. Problem is, you're getting this little flashing ILS warning. That's just giving you a little warning to say the fact that we don't actually have an ILS right now, and it's going to kind of yell at us when we hit that one on there like that. So we're crossing that point right there. There is our top of descent, and you can see our top of descent is passed by us. That's perfectly fine. What we can do now is we can come over here, and we can go ahead and push the up arrow on this one. And what you're going to notice is you're going to get a new mode that's going to say DES on the little components here. And this is basically yelling at me saying, hey, just so you know, we're in computer control descent mode. And now that that's been selected, we have a pre-selected altitude of alt. And the reason that's that color, by the way, if you're kind of curious about that, is it's just giving us a heads up saying we have a cap, and that the cap is going to be 3,000 feet. So even though we've selected 1,800 feet, it's not going to go past 3,000 feet. Because if you come down here, you'll see our next constraint is actually right at 3,000 feet. So making our way down, now we're going to go ahead and get this thing down on the ground in San Francisco, but that shall be for the next video. Enjoy.